Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. This is Patrick Halstead in Kirkland, Washington, near Microsoft. I hope everyone can hear me okay. We are recording, and today we have a really interesting topic. We're not normally ones to cry wolf, you know. InfoPath is still a large part of our business, and we think it's still the premier forms technology out there. But we've been worried about Microsoft's support for InfoPath. Specifically, Microsoft announced, well, before we get there, let me talk about what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to actually talk about a few regressions, two minor ones and one major one that have come up in the last 2 or 3 months. We've been talking to people about this, but we haven't really consolidated the message into one webinar yet, and so that's the purpose of today's short webinar. You know, this is about a 15-20 minute webinar. I'll do a short demo and I'll talk about these different regressions that we've seen. By regression, what I mean is the functionality or the experience using InfoPath has degraded over the last two months or so, and it's only 2013. So we'll have a quick poll in a second here asking what version you've got. We're also going to talk briefly about the bugaboo, I think I said that right, out there in the future where it's like, okay, now we're going to get 2016. What's going to happen to my InfoPath 2013? So we'll talk a little bit about that. That's number 3. And then we'll consider a couple migration paths for you and recommend something. And we'll talk shortly at the end about SharePoint On Prem and if that affects you and how it does. So, quick history then. You know, Microsoft shipped InfoPath 2003. That should not be 203. It should be 2003. It should ship 2003, obviously in 2003, not in AD 203. They've been shipping it every year since I left in 2003. It is the forms technology in SharePoint. It's used for list editing. It's used for full-blown forms, and it is a great tool. We've talked about it in the past. Obviously, this looks like the wrong slide. Let's see here. I guess I've got 2 of the same here. I'm sorry. Here's the right slide with a few extra things in it. In 2013, Microsoft announced that InfoPath would be the last one. Actually, in 2014, Microsoft announced InfoPath 2013 was going to be the last release, and that was January of last year. We actually started working on a migration path for folks, a free app that we announced also at the same time. Microsoft at the SharePoint conference in 2014 announced that Forms on SharePoint Lists, aka Fossil, would be a path forward for customers of 365 and of SharePoint On Prem. And then we believed them, of course. We shipped the beta for our Forms Viewer app, and then we shipped version 1.0 last summer. And then at the end of last year, at the MVP Summit, Microsoft said they were canceling Forms on SharePoint Lists. That was, of course, NDA at the time, and then they announced it in January, shortly thereafter. And they said that they're going to ship InfoPath again, but just the form services piece. So 2013 would not be shipped again. In fact, 2016 will not have them. And that's sort of where we're at today. Qdabra just shipped version 1.1 of Forms here. We have quite a few customers using it now. And anyway, that's just kind of lay the, lay the groundwork here. So where we're, what are we looking at right now? We're looking at a situation in which Microsoft has said they're not going to be, just like they're not shipping SharePoint Designer 2016, they're not doing that. They're not shipping InfoPath in 2013. So what's happening? What we see is we see a couple regressions. Actually, we see 3 regressions in the rich client. When I say rich client, I mean the app, the InfoPath client app that runs on your computer, not the browser. And we've seen 3 regressions in the last 3 months. We've been worried about these regressions because we know that the InfoPath support team at Microsoft is just a few people, and we've been in close contact with them. We're trying to help them. Of course, they know about these issues. We've been talking with them about them over the last month or so. The first issue is regarding the designer. And what happens, and this is only 2013, and actually before I do this, I'm going to actually just quickly shoot you a poll here because I've got one very short poll. Just want to get a quick idea of who's using 2013 because this only affects 2013. It does not affect 2010 or 2007. And the issues I'm talking about today are only affecting 2013. Okay, so it looks like we have, I'm going to let it go for another 5 seconds here. We've got 73% of you are using 2013, 18% are saying no but soon, and 9% are staying with 2010. Great, thank you for that. Okay, so with that in mind, this is relevant. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if you weren't concerned. And specifically, we've seen this bug. So if you've seen this screen, you probably know what I'm talking about. But when you right-click and try to design an InfoPath form template, that's an XSN file on your local machine, you see this error. It says InfoPath cannot load the view. The view may have been modified to contain unsupported HTML such as frames. How many people have seen this error? Should have had a poll for that. But it's not blocking, and the reason for that is that there's several ways to work around it. I have one machine where this happens consistently on about 20% of all the forms I try to open. I have another machine, it doesn't happen at all. So I think this has been fixed in a very recent release, about a month or so ago. For those of you who are still seeing it, what I've found is that if you try opening the form again, usually on the second or the third or the fourth time, it'll open just fine in the designer. It's just crazy, right? Why would that happen? But that's the case. Sometimes when it doesn't open after the third or fourth time, what I do is I maximize the screen and change the window size. It has to do with the InfoPath application, the window. There's some bug around the window of the application that's causing this. So not a big deal. Number two is a more, would I say, a more obvious issue, and this happens in the filler. You're running the filler in preview mode via the designer, or you're running the filler without, just standalone on your machine, and you get an error pop-up. And the error pop-up has clipped text. How many people are seeing this? This actually happens a lot, and it's very unnerving because you think to yourself, well, that's really crummy that they would give us this and it wouldn't fix this, you know. And it comes in two variants. It comes in kind of the OK variant where there's no option, and then there's also the variant where it has a show details button. If you get this variant where you've actually got a show details button, all you have to do is click on it and it will give you the error. And then it will fix the bug and it will show you the entire text here at the top. So this is also not a blocking issue. And if you don't have that variant, if you just get the OK one, then what you do is you open up the event viewer and you can take a look at your Office alerts. Let's just show you how to do that. So you'll basically go to Windows Start and you'll type in event, and you'll see at the very top there'll be a program event viewer. I'm launching that on my machine. I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a second. So here's my event viewer, and what you're going to do is you're going to drill down on application and services logs. Now this takes a little bit of time to expand. In fact, it can take up to a minute. I don't know if I want to wait that long, but once it does expand, you'll see Microsoft Office alerts here. And if you look at this, all of the InfoPath error messages will show up here. And you can see that last one there that I experienced. So this is a very relatively frequent issue, and I saw it yesterday at 11:30 p.m. Okay, so that's how you see it if you can't get to the show details dialog. So once again, this is not a huge deal, and there's a couple workarounds. The blocking issue, if there is one, is this memory leak, and we just saw this with the customer last week. It is not, I don't know how prevalent it is, but it's concerning. This is also the filler. And what's happening is when you query a data set, like a database, a SQL database, or a web service that returns a lot of data, the working set, and this is Performance Monitor, this is a screenshot, a partial screenshot of our Task Manager tool running, looking at the performance. And you see here this column on the right next to where it says InfoPath. this is the amount of memory it's using. So on the top, it's using 255 megabytes of working set. Actually, it's like 253 megabytes, whatever, 250 megabytes, because each megabyte's 1024K, right? So if I'm not doing my math right, but you get the idea. It's using about 250 megabytes of working set. That's memory. And then you query it again. The first time it works just fine. No problem. You query it again, and all hell breaks loose, and it just goes, it spikes, basically. And you see down below here, it's spiking to 1.3, roughly 1.3 gigabytes of memory, and then the thing fails, right? And this is an issue that we're only seeing, once again, with the filler. We're only seeing it with 2013 and with the release from last week. So we're trying to isolate the KB that came out. This is a result of an Office update. All of these bugs are the result of Office updates. So Microsoft tries to fix something, they cause a regression. And this is one of them. It is relatively recent. I don't have it running on my machines. We're just seeing it with a customer in Australia. And it is worrisome, to say the least. But obviously, you could roll back the Office update. And that is not hard to do. So those are the issues we're seeing right now. The good news is, if there is any good news, is that we have seen bugs before with the Office updates, and Microsoft has fixed those. So we had a bug last year where you couldn't open InfoPath from Internet Explorer. It would basically show up all the XML text in the browser. It wouldn't open the filler from the browser. You'd get XML text, right? You wouldn't get the filler launching and all that. They fixed that in August. So there has been some improvements. There have been bug fixes. In general, 2013 used to crash a lot about a year ago, and it's a lot better now. It's on par with 2010. But we're still concerned, and that's why we bring you this message every week. Okay, so the number two thing I want to talk about was perhaps a bigger issue. For those of you with 365, and this only affects Office 365, we have started seeing a Sandbox Perf slowdown. What does that mean? If you're using the Sandbox, which was Microsoft's best practice guidance 3 years ago, if you're writing code for SharePoint, use the Sandbox, right? Because if you're using the Sandbox, your application can't adversely affect somebody else's application, right? They have separate sandboxes. They don't all use the same process space. So the Sandbox is really good, right? This was the the best practice 3 or 4 years ago when Microsoft came out with it in 2010. And then they deprecated it about 2 years ago. So they announced it as the programmability model for SharePoint, and then because of the move to Office 365, they realized that the Sandbox would not scale. And so they decided they're going to deprecate it. Deprecate means to cancel it. They announce they're going to cancel it, but they don't cancel it for 10 years. So that's called deprecation. They deprecate it, they move it down one level, 10 years later they stop supporting it. And that's because of all the enterprise license agreements Microsoft has. They have to support it for many, many years after they ship it. So they deprecated it in 2013, I want to say. I want to say it was about 2 years ago, around this time. They said, look, the Sandbox is deprecated, and we're going to be moving away from it. But they didn't actually move away from it immediately. So Office 365, which Microsoft runs, the Sandbox has been great. I mean, it's been fast, it's been fine. We've been using it for years, and we've always had the 1 second or less open for forms with code. So you only need the Sandbox if your form has code. Unfortunately, one of our products, QRules, uses the Sandbox. So we're concerned about this. We were concerned about this because we knew that they had announced this, but we weren't seeing any adverse effects. Some of our new customers were seeing bad performance. Sometimes that was because of the data center. And when I say bad performance, there's really 3 things we look at: load time, the time it takes to tab between fields, and the time it takes to submit a form. So those are the 3 metrics we look at. And generally, you're seeing slow load time. So everything was just hunky-dory, with a few exceptions, up until last summer. That was only a few months ago. And then we started seeing, around August, some massive issues with people, where it was taking 10 to 20 seconds to open, and it was variable. So we had one customer on the East Coast that had a really bad experience. She called Microsoft support. Next day it was fine. So, and then 2 weeks later it was bad again. Let me just show you kind of, I've got some examples here that I want to see if I can get to my notes here. Well, okay, here they are. So just give me a second here. I'm going to launch a couple examples. So just to show you what I mean by this, I've got some examples here. And the first example I'm going to show you is a form that does not have, this is just a really, what we call a rinky-dink form. It's not anything we feel proud about. But I'm just going to quickly show you this example that I just threw this example again last night, as you can see. We're going to open this up here, and we're going to time it here using our wall clock. So everyone ready? 3, 2, 1, clicking new. Now it doesn't actually, the form just opens instantaneously. There's 2 steps to a form open process. There's the step where it actually tries to find the app to launch it, and then there's the actual app loading. So the first thing, before you see the loading, it's trying to find the app, and then it loads the form. So there's a 2-step process. You see the 2 messages, but it's essentially instantaneous. Okay, that form is really simple. It's like, well, who cares? The other, let me just show you another example here. Hillary Stupa, one of our top developers here, she published an example with 1 line of code in it. So it's not Q rules, it's just 1 line of code. Same form, or same, basically the form that looks like it now, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Okay, that's just the library. Now, let me click on the new here. So you're ready? 3, 2, 1. We're going to count this together. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006. Okay, 7 seconds. It loaded the form with 2 lines of code. Let's go back to the Q rules example. Another form with the test we just injected Q rules. We're not running it any commands or anything on load. 1001, 1002. And now it's switching, it's trying to find the sandbox, right? And now it's found at 1001, 1002, 1000, and now, so it's about 6, 7 seconds. So you see there's, the slowdown is partially because it can't find the sandbox, and then once it loads, it's also a little bit slower. So that's kind of what we're talking about. It's not the end of the world, obviously. Let me just go back to my slides here. So it's not the end of the world, but it is unnerving, disconcerting, or, well, concerning, I guess is the word. Disconcerting is the right word. So what's one to do? Well, we've got a few options for you. First of all, you could live with it for now. It's not that bad. It's 5 to 10 seconds for most forms. If you've got a Q rules form, it could be 10 to 20 seconds. Sometimes it's hard to deal with that kind of a delay, though, in your business process. You could remove the code from your form. And most forms don't require code anyway. But if you're trying to submit to repeating lists, or you're trying to submit repeating items to a list, or if you're trying to open a form from a link, or any one of the 160 different extensions that we have in Q rules, you won't be able to do that unless you go with the next option, which is to install our free app, FormsViewer. Now, we've been talking about FormsViewer for quite a long time. It's really easy to install. All you have to do is just go to our FormsQuote site. We started off, we're here for you, and we started off doing an After InfoPath series back in 2014. We went through all of these different technologies, kind of giving you a lay of the land, what's up next, what should I use, and we did videos on each one of these and analysis. At the same time, nobody had a free version. And nobody had a version that would migrate from InfoPath. So we thought, well, we have to do this for our customers. We have to create an app that they can use to protect their investment. And that's what we did with FormsViewer. So FormsViewer, you download it here, you install it, and it supports, I would say, 90% of the InfoPath functionality today. Most of the forms just work just fine. There's a few things we're working on for 1.2 that may prevent you from moving at this time. For example, the people picker. That's pretty big, and rich text. So we are addressing the support for these 3 controls that we don't have support for today. But there are workarounds. So if you're using people picker, we can swap that out, get user profile service with some controls. Pretty easy to change that. And most people don't really need rich text because it's not structured. You're using a form because you want to get the data out. Rich text doesn't allow you to do that. And multi-select is actually a bad practice. So these controls, we didn't do them because for good reason, obviously, but we are going to be implementing them in the near future. The other thing you could do is you could basically submit the data if you need to extract data from your forms. And the most common reason why you would need the Sandbox is to extract data from your repeating items. Then you can also submit to a database and extract the data there. There's some licensing fees. You could also submit to your internal server. We have a web service that will help with this process. So we're here for you. Lastly, what the heck is going on with the 2016 InfoPath 2013 story? So Office 2016 will uninstall 2013, right? You're worried. Well, if I install 2016, I'm going to get it. It's a one-click install. It's drizzled down to me from 365. I get it whether I like it or not, right? That's true. And it will uninstall 2013. So Microsoft, last month, they published this download page here. And if you click on this, you can download InfoPath 2013. And that's all well and good. It's kind of like what happened when they sunsetted Microsoft Money. It was out there free, available, right? Except it's not free. You have to actually put in a product key. At least that's the story today. We don't know what the product key should be. I've sent email to Microsoft asking them. It's possible that they would make it free. That would be really wonderful. But that's kind of where we're at today, is that you could obviously, you're going to have to, if you have a 2013 product key, you can just use that. You would install 2013 over 2016 and either repair it or whatever to get it working, and then you'd have the designer. So for those of you using the designer to create your forms, that's Microsoft's stated solution. And the concern that we have is for those of you who are just using 365, those 2016 product keys won't work with 2013. So what do? Are they going to make it free? Are they going to give us a product key that will work? That's the current open question. Our recommendation today is to try that FormsViewer app, download it, try it out. Don't necessarily move to it yet, but start trying it. Obviously we have customers on it, but we're here to support you, and we obviously there's a link to it. And for those of you who have SharePoint On Prem, you don't really care because you can always roll back, and you shouldn't be just taking every single SharePoint update they give you. Some people do. But I don't recommend it because there are issues that crop up time and time again. So pretty much that's it for my short demonstration webinar. Questions from the audience? And it's great to have you all here today. Thanks for joining. We will get this up on YouTube, and of course there will be links to download FormsViewer. It looks like we have a few questions here. Just going to go to the question. Question from Jesse. Can you expand on InfoPath vNext? Yeah, when we say InfoPath vNext, we're talking about FormsViewer. So the benefit of FormsViewer app is that it reads InfoPath format. It allows you to display and edit your forms in the browser today. And it includes extensions. So it includes commands that were not in 2013, such as submitting to SharePoint lists. Let me just share out my screen again where I have all those details. So here are the commands in what we're calling InfoPath vNext. You can go to our website here, download this free app, and we have extensions. We have videos here as well, so you can scroll down to the videos. We've done webinars in the past on this. You can see the release history, but basically the benefit of FormsViewer is, as I said in my previous slide, there's really number one, your browser forms continue to work. You're not dependent on Microsoft. You don't have to worry about the Sandbox because the FormsViewer comes with those top 25 commands that QRules offers. No code required, so you won't have the Sandbox slowdown. In addition, we've implemented support for external users so they can submit forms without a SharePoint license. So you don't even need SharePoint Enterprise to run this app. You can run it on SharePoint Foundation for free. and that'll save you a ton of money. And of course, we've extended it to use features that are not in InfoPath, for example, submitting to REST web services, JSON web services. And then finally, you know, we've got your back. So we've been around for 12 years now, and we're not going away anytime soon. And we really want to plan for the next technology. The technology that has to come next is a technology that's as rich as InfoPath, but you know, in other words, it has to be document-centric. It has to have a good HTML-based design surface. It has to be standard XML format so you can get the data out. It has to have rich logic so that you can create forms without having to hire a developer. And it has to work in the mobile. And those criteria right now, you know, InfoPath supports them, but nobody else does. You know, Nintex is not document-centric. K2 costs money. I mean, there's lots of different technologies out there, but they're not necessarily a good migration path for most people because they're not document-based, or because they require code, or because they cost a lot of money. And so our goal here was to sort of solve that issue, that, you know, sort of that challenge. There are a couple vendors out there that are doing really interesting work. PDF Shareforms, love what they're doing. They're document-centric, they're XML-based, and they're cheap. I mean, they're not free, but they're inexpensive. And we've done webinars on their technology twice now in the last year. But yeah, our stuff is really meant to take, they don't migrate you from existing forms. So we actually take your existing form and allow you to continue using it. Next question, I hope that answered your question, Jesse. That's a long-winded answer. Shane, it doesn't need to work in the sandbox. So it would avoid all the Sandbox perf issues. Yeah, thank you, Shane. Yes, indeed. Forms Viewer does not, it avoids all the Sandbox perf issues, the Sandbox slowdown, because it's all JavaScript. It doesn't work. It doesn't have the, and we've done webinars on Forms Viewer. I'm not doing a huge demo today. I'm just saying try it. But yeah, that would be the solution for the slowdown. Obviously, any bugs in InfoPath. Hey, thanks for being here, everyone. We look forward to having you next week. Actually, next week we're not doing our webinar because we have a company retreat. So if you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to send us email. That's a webinars@qdabra.com, or you can send me an email to support@qdabra.com. Like I said, we're here for you. We're not scared of the wolf. We knew it was coming, and we just want to be completely transparent with everyone, let people know what's going on. Short 4-question survey here. If you fill it out, we really appreciate it, and hope you all have a wonderful day.